we will adhere to for this conference. That link is posted in the chat. If you experience any issues related to conduct, please contact us via the email also posted in the chat. Please ensure your microphone is muted. During the question and answer session, please wait until you're invited to unmute before asking your question or making a comment. Otherwise, do pose your questions via the question and answer icon, and answers will be provided at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded. You can enable captions by clicking on the Show Caption button at the bottom of the screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenter. Janice is the Health Sciences Librarian at the University of Alberta, Canada. Please join me in welcoming Janice Kong. Go right ahead, Janice.
Thank you so much, Selwyn, for that introduction. Hi, everyone. I am pleased to be with you today to share some examples of how we may integrate generative AI in libraries. And before I begin, I have to give you a conflict of interest statement that I have no financial interests or other personal interests in any of the sources and tools that I will be talking about in my session today. And before I jump into my talk, I want to learn a little bit more about all of you. So I have two really quick questions for you to give me some insight. So I'm just going to move that over. And then I'm also going to put the link in the chat so that you can participate. So two very quick questions to get started. The first one here is, how often do you use generative AI tools? And I'll give everyone maybe 10, 15 seconds here to participate if you would like. And this will give me a better sense of who's in the audience today. Oh, and it's not in the chat. Oh, I apologize, everybody. Let me switch it to everyone here. That's my fault. Let's try that again. So how often? How often do you use it? Never, a couple of times, multiple times, too often? You have a problem? So I'll give everyone maybe 5 more seconds here. Okay, well, thank you. So you can see that in our group today, that a majority of us have used AI in some shape or form, which is great. So this will not be an introductory session. And I apologize for those who are not as familiar, but you'll still learn a few interesting things today. And the second question I have is, what kind of generative AI tools have you already tried for library-related purposes or work-related purposes? So open-ended. What kind of AI tools have you already tried? Okay, so we are seeing ChatGPT. There's Claude, NotebookLM, Research Rabbit, Gemini. Excellent. Okay. And some others as well. So you can see that there is a variety of AI tools that are out there today. And I will be also showing several tools. And as you can see, some of you have already had experience with that, which is great. So I am not an expert in this. I'm sure we can all learn from each other. So feel free to share your experiences as we go throughout the day. For today's talk, I will have a rapid fire of examples of how you may use AI to support your work. And I will be talking about it in the context of post-secondary education. And I recognize that many of you are from other library contexts. So try to brainstorm how the examples I am providing, how could that translate to your own respective libraries, whether that's a public library setting, a school library, or a special library. So I hope that you'll be able to take something away from this. But the focus for today will be in the academic higher education type of context. Thank you so much for participating in that. All right, so we are just going to jump right into the content. In terms of how I'm going to structure the talk, I'm going to focus on these 4 key areas in our work in libraries. And for each key area, I'm going to share some specific prompts of what you may use to support that work. So let's begin with library instruction. And many of us do instruction in different ways. For example, we might be pulled in from faculty members to provide guest lectures in the course, or we might even have non-curriculum type of teaching where we offer library workshops to the community. And when we are building library instruction, we tend to perform these tasks. And so you're going to see very quickly here how we may use generative AI to support this work. And library instruction goes beyond teaching AI. It could be about teaching peer review process, research, searching, scholarly communications. It covers a wide gamut of different topics. So let's start with learning outcomes and objectives. Here's a sample prompt that you could put into ChatGPT to help you get some ideas of how to develop and craft your learning objectives and outcomes. So the prompt I have here is generate 3 learning objectives and outcomes for a first-year undergraduate English class using the 2001 version of Bloom's taxonomy. Focus on higher order thinking skills related to literary analysis and research skills. If possible, you could provide some specific assignment details in the prompt to make the output more accurate, but also keep in mind that if you are uploading any content that is not yours, that is the faculty members, to ensure that you have the proper permissions to do that. Also consult your institutional AI policies on what is allowed, what is not allowed, that kind of thing. So we're going to throw this right into ChatGPT here, and you see that it's listing out those objectives, aligning it with that Bloom's taxonomy, and also identifying the learning outcome. So here's the first objective that it identified. And then we can keep scrolling down in ChatGPT, and it provides 2 others. So you can see this is a really nice way to just get a starting point. To figure out what would be good learning objectives that I want to craft into my teaching. And sometimes I do use this, especially when I am developing a library workshop where I am not collaborating with a faculty member. If you are collaborating with a faculty member, this is a perfect opportunity to collaborate and say that, you know, I came up with some of these learning objectives by using AI. What do you think? Are these in alignment with the course objectives, with the assignment, and having that really good discussion to ensure that you are collaborating with that instructor. You can also use AI tools to develop learning objects, including handouts, worksheets. You can develop graphics to explain complex concepts. You can even use it to develop case studies or role play scenarios. So here's an example of a prompt that we can input into Perplexity, which is another generative AI tool similar to ChatGPT. And then here's another prompt on getting some ideas of discussion points to have a really good discussion in class about certain topics. So just some ideas there. We're going to put the first prompt, the role play scenario, into Perplexity, and we're going to see what it returns. And when you are using AI tools for this kind of work, also keep in mind what version of that AI tool you have. For me, I only use the free versions. And so you'll see here in Perplexity is giving me a note that, oh, I have 2 free searches left today. Because in Perplexity, it only allows you to conduct 3 searches, 3 free searches per day. So just be mindful of the limitations based on those AI tools. Okay, so you can see here for Perplexity, it's giving us a nice objective, the setting, the roles for different students in that role play activity. And when we scroll further down, it's also providing some additional information that can help you figure out how are you going to run this interactive activity in class. So it just gives you some other insights to consider when you are developing these kinds of things. The third thing we can use AI for is to help with developing promotional materials. For example, when we are running library workshops or maybe in public libraries, the programming, you just need some ideas of how to draft a really catchy workshop title and description to advertise that session. And I do this regularly just to, again, get a starting point to help me figure out, okay, what's a really good way for me to advertise this session to the students and to the faculty in my university. You can also use AI to help with developing social media posts. What's a really good catchy phrase I could put into Instagram or into TikTok, that kind of thing. You can also use it to help you create posters if you're promoting your sessions that way in the traditional sense where you're going around and putting up posters. It's also really useful for that as well. Another idea is to use AI to help with assessment and evaluation, whether that is informal assessment to kind of quiz the students throughout your session, or you have formative assessment. Here's an example of a sample prompt on developing multiple choice questions. And the wonderful thing about this is you can try to be as specific as you want in crafting that those quiz questions. You can even specify the number of options you want. Do you want 4 or 5 responses? Do you want the answers to have some of all of the above options or none of the above? So you can really specify what you're looking for in your quiz questions. So those are just some quick examples of using AI to help with library instruction. Let's move on to the second example, which is evidence synthesis support. For those of you who are not as familiar with what is evidence synthesis, another label for it is knowledge synthesis. It is the process of systematically gathering and summarizing research findings on a topic to inform evidence-based decision making. And because I'm a health librarian, we do this a lot. This is kind of our bread and butter. We help researchers conduct systematic reviews, scoping reviews, and literature reviews in general. And so for this kind of work, it is possible to integrate AI into some of the steps in this process. So I have highlighted some of that here in this slide to refine the research question, the searching, screening through literature, and data extraction. Let's see this in more detail here. So you can see that we have the general steps that researchers undertake when they complete one of these synthesis reviews. And I'm going to highlight certain stages of this process where we may use AI to help, either to help the student or the researcher, or to help ourselves if we are developing our own synthesis review. So for question formulation, you can see that it could be really useful for students who are starting out if they're not really sure how to refine their question, how can they word it properly. So an AI tool could be a really nice thought partner or brainstorming partner to help them think about developing a really good comprehensive research question. So I have some example prompts there for them to just start thinking, the critical thinking process, to kind of move the brain a little bit. Another way to use AI is in the searching stage, where we could get AI to help with developing a draft search or to come up with what are the keywords, what are the search terms that they could use in a database. They could also use it to identify synonyms and related terms to build a really good comprehensive search. For me personally, I even use this all the time, especially in the health context. We get a lot of scenarios and research topics that I do not have expertise because I don't have a medical background. So I do use AI a lot for this. So I get this really complex research question. I don't know half of the words. I put it into ChatGPT and then I say, can you explain this research topic in simple terms? And then, okay, I get it. Then I can now better help the research team because I have that background, the context of what they're looking for. I'm just going to skip ahead, several steps ahead to data extraction. Data extraction is what researchers do to collect some of the variables that they want to use to summarize, to draw some key insights. And one of the tools that I've been sharing with students is Elicit. Elicit is a really interesting AI tool to support this research process where they can quickly identify relevant papers and they can summarize those papers. And one interesting thing about Elicit as well is that it creates this comparison table that summarizes all of the important bits of each of those papers. And this is a really novel way for researchers to identify some articles quickly on their topic. So I'm going to show you Elicit a quick demo because this is a really interesting tool. If you have never seen it before, then I think you might be quite impressed with it. But before I go into Elicit, we need a topic to search for. So I'm going to use this as our sample scenario. What is the effect of daily mindfulness meditation on self-reported stress and cortisol levels in adults? I think we're all stressed in some shape or form nowadays, right? So I thought we would all appreciate this sample scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and move Elicit in. And by the way, this is the free account that I'm using currently for Elicit. So you can see I am putting in the research question in, and this is what it returns to us. It gives us 4 papers that are relevant to answer that question, and they summarize it. So it's kind of like a nice mini literature review that it does. Then further down, it provides you with this comparison table. So you can see we have the paper and the abstract summary. Some of you might be wondering, what's the data source? What is Elicit using? They are using Semantic Scholar because it is freely available, and many AI tools actually use Semantic Scholar as the data source. So there are pros and cons for that, but in the interest of time, we're not going to get into it, but let's just bear with me here. So here you can see that they list the 4 articles that was mentioned in the summary, but they also list others as well that could potentially be relevant to that topic. To the right, they have columns where you may add columns to draw further insights from that. For example, if we wanted to see what are the main findings of those studies, we can go ahead and click that, and you can see now it is generating the main findings in the table. It's building in that new column. And this is a really quick way for us to identify, okay, what are the main findings from each of these papers? In the free account, it only allows you to add up to 2 columns. So you see there are limitations with the free versions. So that's one thing you can do in Elicit. One other thing you can do is you can select the papers that you really like. And I'll just select the first 4 like that. And then we can scroll further down until they have a section called Add a New Step. What this is doing is we can draw further insights from those 4 papers we selected. You can see we can create a new table, so we can just focus on those. We can summarize them. We can also chat with those 4 papers. When you click on chat with papers, it gives you this search window where you can add in prompts on what additional information do you want to learn about them. For example, we can say, do any papers include suggestions for future studies of cortisol levels? So we can really dig further in. So I'm just going to go ahead and run that. and then it's going to give us a summary from those 4 papers. So you can see you can do a lot of really interesting things with it by using the chat with papers. One last thing I'm going to highlight in Elicit is if we go to the library section on the top, they have a function where you may upload your own full text articles to do the analysis, to do your own data extraction. So some of you probably already have some alarm bells about copyright and licensed content. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about uploading content in a moment. So I just wanted to show you some additional features of Elicit. All right, let's jump back into our slides. And I want to highlight another tool. And I'm so glad that some of you have already tried NotebookLM because you mentioned that you saw it. Oh, I'm sorry, there are some questions in the chat, sorry. When you're working on systematic reviews and use AI, how do you reference its use in the methods? That's a great question. So for me personally, I do not use it for evidence synthesis. For researchers that do, they should. They should have a disclosure statement. They could add it in the methods, or they can just add it as a supplemental disclosure at the end of it. And we can talk about that in a moment on how can you write that statement, because I do know of an AI disclosure framework that I share with students all the time. So that's a great question. And there's another comment here. Let me just quickly double check here. I would include the plan to use the tools in the protocol and document with the tools. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Sarah, for adding to that question. Yes, exactly. Okay, so NotebookLM is another AI product that is similar to Elicit in that you can upload content. NotebookLM is a Google product. They use Gemini as the AI model, and it does require a personal Gmail account for you to use it. And you can generate summaries, explanations. You can also ask your own prompts based on the content that you upload. It allows up to 50 files to be uploaded. So in addition to the PDFs that we saw in Elicit, you may also upload audio files. You can integrate Google Documents into it. You can also pull in content from the internet through websites and YouTube videos. And they can summarize everything holistically. They also have this really interesting audio feature where it generates a podcast based on the content you upload. And it has 2 AI hosts that are talking to each other in this podcast, and they sound eerily like humans. It's kind of wild. And I'm just going to quickly rapid fire show you some of the screenshots of how this tool works. Once we are signed in to our Gmail account, you can upload your sources. You can see here, you can drag and drop the PDFs into it. I would recommend if you are uploading PDF documents to do it from your computer, not through a Google folder or some documents on the cloud. It's just a lot easier to move the files in if it's on your computer. Then you can see there are options to pull in information through your Google Drive and also links on the internet. You can also copy and paste text directly into NotebookLM. And let's return to our meditation sample scenario. Let's imagine, in addition to the scholarly papers we found in Elicit, I want to pull in some gray literature to supplement my review. Here are 5 PDF documents that I found on the internet related to meditation and stress reduction. So I found some documents through Harvard. There was one from the Canadian federal government, and so on and so forth. So you can see on the left-hand column, those are the sources that I have imported. In the middle column, it tells you a nice summary of those sources. Then you'll see that they have some additional features underneath that summary. The briefing doc is a nice feature that I like to select right away because it gives you the summary, an overall summary overview of those sources. So you can see to the right, they're generating that output from NotebookLM. Once it's ready, it's going to give you that a 2-liner for you to then click, and then it's going to give you all of that information. And it's quite lengthy. If you keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, you're going to see it's quite a lot of good content there. Also, back to the middle of the screen, you can see there's a start typing box where you can insert your additional prompts to ask further insights, but it also gives you suggested questions, which I find quite interesting. So they have the first question that they're recommending. So I thought, you know what, let's give it a try. Let's click on that and see what is going to return to us. So the prompt that is suggested is, how do these sources explain the physiological and psychological mechanisms of stress reduction through meditation? And you see it's giving us the nice summary from all of those 5 different sources. What I like is that it also gives you the citation of where it's pulling that information from. And if you really want to dig further, you can click on that number again, and it's going to take you to that PDF, and it will show you where exactly in that document they're pulling that information from. This is great so that it will try to be more accurate, and it will reduce the hallucinations or fabrications that do happen by using generative AI tools. The last thing to note is that when you are putting in all of these prompts, if you really like one, scroll to the very bottom and click on Save to Note, because then it will be saved on the right-hand side so that when you close out of your NotebookLM, you want to come back another day, then you can refer to it there. So that's one thing to keep in mind, because I learned the hard way. I didn't realize that they weren't automatically saved, and I come back and I thought, oh, what happened to all of my really good prompts that I asked the other day? All gone. So that's not great. The last thing I wanted to show you is the podcast that I mentioned. So once you run that function, when it's done loading, it will show you the podcast feature on the right-hand side. You can see it's a 21-minute podcast that they develop within mere minutes. And then you can go ahead and play that, which is, it's wild. It's kind of crazy how good it is. It's kind of scary, actually. Okay, so that is evidence synthesis. Let's move on to how can we use AI tools for research support and our administrative tasks as library staff. For research support, this goes beyond how supporting students and faculty members. We might be conducting our own research as librarians. So that's kind of 2 sides of the coin there. Here is a quick overview of the generative AI tools that are designed to support research. So they all use some form of large language models to do that. And it's great that many of you are familiar with these tools. Wonderful. But this is an overview of tools that you can explore on your own later on if you're interested in exploring others. And we did talk about Elicit today. In addition to research support, one other thing that I find is quite interesting is to have AI tools support your grant applications, whether you are applying for grants yourself or you are supporting researchers with their grant proposals. You can use AI to help you with writing, positioning that proposal. It can even help with maybe refining the methodology for your research project, and so on and so forth. On the right-hand side, I have some examples of how you can write prompts into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to help you refine and craft that grant application. And the last thing that I will cover is administrative tasks. In the post-secondary education setting, as a librarian, I need to write annual reports all the time. So I need to report on my activities in the previous year. And what I found to be really effective is to use AI tools to help me brainstorm what kind of things I want to report on. Traditionally, when I didn't use AI, it would take days to do this. But now that I have been trying to use AI, it has been reduced down to hours to complete the annual report. And so for me, it was okay to use AI in this case because I didn't have any confidential or sensitive information that I was worried in uploading that. So you do have to keep in mind on your particular use case, are there any security issues, confidentiality that you want to be mindful? So if there is, don't do it. Don't upload that content into AI tools. It can also help with summarizing notes, maybe meeting notes, or you're working through strategic planning. Maybe you're gathering all of the ideas across, different different units, different departments, different branches in libraries, and you want to just collate all of that information to identify the common themes. This is a great way to do that, to upload that information and to get some insights about that, to save time. You can also use it for general idea generation and brainstorming for any type of activity that you're doing, whether you're developing projects or programming, that kind of thing. It can also be useful for communications. I was speaking with some colleagues and they were trying to navigate an interesting conversation with students that were not as pleased with reduced hours in the library. And so they wanted to be careful on how they write that email message to the student about that. And they used AI to draft a nice diplomatic way to explain the situation to the student. And that was a really good example of using AI to help with that communication. You can also use AI to help with data analysis or pattern recognition, whether you're doing assessment work in the library, or it could also be for research purposes as well. And lastly, I want to just cover responsible use. We know AI is great, but it comes with some caveats. If you are using AI for any work, be mindful that the final output is your responsibility. So you want to just you want to double check everything that is accurate and you're not providing misinformation. Attribution is really important. That was mentioned in the chat. If you are using AI for any type of work, it is important to disclose that for transparency purposes. And just make sure you always assess the outputs. Don't assume everything is correct and accurate. You need to double check. Speaking about uploading documents, this is a really tricky question to navigate. I get these questions all the time by researchers. My general rule is open access is fine because they're freely available on the web anyways. If you have an institutional AI license, either Copilot, Gemini, or an education ChatGPT account, generally, it is okay to upload information that is not public because your IT departments have already vetted those tools and they are not taking your uploaded content and using it elsewhere or repurposing it to retrain the data. Generally, it's okay. However, I always say if you have extremely sensitive data or confidential information, personnel data, don't do it. Do not upload that content into AI tools just to ensure that we don't have that information leaked out of there. And that is everything I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much for your attention. And I welcome any questions that you may have at this time. So Selwyn, please read the questions that I cannot see.
Yes, thank you so much for that presentation, Janice. So in the Q&A box, are you able to view that? You're not?
Let me see here. Am I
There's some
allowed to
long
view?
questions there.
Oh
You may
my
have,
goodness. Maybe I can. Oh, I can see it. Yes, yes, I do.
right, great.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it for you? Make it
Sure.
easier?
Yes, yeah, that'd be great. That would be great.
Good, so let's do the first one. We are seeing a lot of students and faculty in engineering asking whether it is okay to have ChatGPT, the paid versions, do the title abstract screening stage of evidence synthesis projects like systematic reviews. How are librarians handling this? Are papers getting rejected because folks did this? Is there important reporting guidance or general best practices when using AI tools for the screening process to alert researchers too?
That's a great question. So, if researchers come to me and they say they want to use an AI tool to help with their screening for systematic reviews, I tell them to not do it. And the reason why is due to the nature of how AI models work, in that it can fabricate and make stuff up. So we cannot assume that the AI tools will follow our instructions to the letter. They might even make up new references that you did not input. And so it's not the best tool for that. So unfortunately, that's what I would say, that do not do not use ChatGPT to help with the screening, because I think in the long run, it will be more work for them to go back and verify whether or not it is accurate, because they could just easily insert new references that were not imported. And so, sorry, there's a related question from Lorraine. Let's see.
Yes, go
Yeah.
ahead. The point of publishing evidence synthesis studies, such as systematic reviews, is to assist clinicians with caring for patients. Do clinicians have any reservations about using reviews that were generated using AI tools?
That's a great question too. I think clinicians are not as aware of how synthesis studies are being produced, because I think it's still, maybe it's early days, and it's very hard to determine if you read a publication or you're reading a point of care tool, whether or not the sources were developed with the help of AI tools. So I think they are not aware of that. So I hope that answers the question. And then, so sorry, I'm just reading the questions here because I know we're running short on time. So,
Yes,
so
we have
I will
some
be
time.
quick. I
No,
will be quick.
you have some
Okay,
time. So let me read it. Someone
sure.
said, Cecile said, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but did you say that you don't use AI tools when you're supporting systematic reviews? Can you explain why?
So I use it in certain contexts. Thank you so much for that question. So when I am working with research teams, let's go back to that slide. I'm just going to close out of this. Let's go back to the steps here because it might be easier for us to look at it. So when we are looking through the steps in general for these projects, I would be very strategic on how I use AI or how I guide researchers to use AI. So they can use it to help them develop their question, the question formulation. If they want some help with the literature search on like brainstorming keywords, or to develop even a preliminary search to help them get started, that's fine. For data extraction, the reason why I mentioned this is because I know researchers are doing it. In Elicit, I didn't cover this earlier, but they even have a systematic review feature, which is a misnomer. It's a bad label for it because we know who do the work, it is not a true systematic review, right? Because they're only consulting one source. And there, in terms of the transparency, the reporting, it's not, right? And so that's where I tell researchers to be cautious. If they do want to use AI tools for something like this, for data extraction, they have to go back and verify everything because we just don't know if it is accurate. So I hope that answers the question.
Great. So we move on to the next question. If the person who posed that question wishes to respond, feel free to just comment in the chat or so in the Q&A. Right, for Mary Jo, we have, could you share more about the
Yes.
AI disclosure framework you share with students?
Yes, absolutely. I will pull that up right now. It is from an amazing librarian in Canada, Carrie Weaver, and I'm going to pull it up right now. So she developed, I'm going to put it in the chat. She developed this AI disclosure framework that I share with students and researchers all the time. And what this document is here, I'll put it in so everyone can see here. So what the document tells you is the importance of why we need to disclose. But what I really like about it is that she breaks down the headings. You see that? What should we be reporting when we disclose AI use? And then she provides examples of how can we document. So you can see these are really helpful tools to help students or researchers on how to disclose AI use. So we're not saying don't use it. We're saying it's fine to use it, but be transparent and disclose the use.
Okay, great. And we have one more question in the Q&A. How do you help students select which tool to use for research? Example, connected papers, Research Rabbit, Elicit, consensus, etc.
That's a great question too. It's so tricky because I am not an expert. I don't know all the tools really well. And I'm also limited to not having subscriptions to certain tools. For example, Cite only has a subscription. They don't have a free version. So for the other ones that were mentioned, it really depends on the use case. For example, Research Rabbit is really good for the network analysis to identify how papers relate to one another. So that might be really helpful for just citation chaining, finding collaborators, finding related topics to one another. So it's really good for that connectivity, hence the name, connected papers, right? So it depends on the use case. For Elicit and consensus, I kind of group those together because those two tools are more for scholarly articles, finding a few articles to help them get started. So sometimes I do group those together. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't provide a nice framework for which tools to use in which circumstance. That could be a good challenge for one of you out there, and then please then share it with me so that I can use it. But I think, yeah, unfortunately I don't have something like that. For ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, Gemini, I usually group those together because they are general AI tools that could be used in many circumstances, not just for research, not just for education. So yeah, I hope, or maybe if you're aware of a tool where someone did summarize for the different types of activities, yeah, please do share that with us because I think we'd all be interested in that. And I do see Marcia's hand is raised. So sorry for that, Marcia. Do you have a question that you'd like to share or?
Maybe
Or
not.
maybe not. Maybe not.
Yes. Sometimes how you raise your hands, you get the icon opening up.
Maybe not. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
Yes.
Oh, and there's no unmute button. Oh, thank you, Trisha. So Marcia, feel free to type a
Oh,
question in the chat. Yeah, apologies.
yes.
Yeah, maybe they controlled the audio. So let me just get out of this. And then I think the last thing I had was just, yeah, my thanks slide. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions because I did go through that really quickly. Yeah. So thank you everyone for attending and enjoy the rest of your time at the conference.
Yes, Janice, thank you very much for this presentation. We have very positive comments there that have been shared by many of the participants. So do know we appreciate all the effort you've put into sharing this presentation with us, and we wish you all in your future endeavors.
Thanks,
Thank
Elwin.
you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you everyone for participating in this session. See you all tomorrow. We are back at 1 p.m. ET time. Okay, pleasant evening to all. Bye.